unlimited leisure and an accumulation of mental energy to devote to any subject that presented itself. New topics were in fact at a premium. Lydia sometimes had premonitions of a famine-stricken period when there would be nothing left to talk about, and she had already caught herself doling out piecemeal what in the first prodigality of their confidences she would have flung to him in a breath. Their silence, therefore, might simply mean that they had nothing to say, but it was another disadvantage of their position, that it allowed infinite opportunity for the classification of minute differences. Lydia had learnt to distinguish between real and factitious silences, and under Gannet's she now detected a hum of speech to which her own thoughts made breathless answer. How could it be otherwise, with that thing between them? She glanced up at the rack overhead. The thing was there in her dressing bag, symbolically suspended over her head and his. He was thinking of it now, just as she was. They had been thinking of it in unison ever since they had entered the train. While the carriage had held other travellers, they had screened her from his thoughts, but now that he and she were alone, she knew exactly what was passing through his mind. She could almost hear him asking himself what he should say to her. The thing had come that morning, brought up to her in an innocent-looking envelope with the rest of their letters, as they were leaving the hotel at Bologna. As she tore it open, she and Gannet were laughing over some ineptitude of the local guidebook. They had been driven of late to make the most of such incidental humours of travel. Even when she had unfolded the document, she took it for some unimportant business paper sent abroad for her signature, and her eye travelled inattentively over the curly whereases of the preamble until a word arrested her. Divorce. There it stood, an impassable barrier between her husband's name and hers. She had been prepared for it, of course, as healthy people are said to be prepared for death, in the sense of knowing it must come without in the least expecting that it will. She had known from the first that Tillotson meant to divorce her, but what did it matter? Nothing mattered in those first days of supreme deliverance but the fact that she was free, and not so much, she had begun to be aware, that freedom had released her from Tillotson as that it had given her to Gannet. This discovery had not been agreeable to her self-esteem. She had preferred to think that Tillotson had himself embodied all her reasons for leaving him, and those he represented had seemed cogent enough to stand in no need of reinforcement. Yet she had not left him till she met Gannet. It was her love for Gannet that had made life with Tillotson so poor and incomplete a business. If she had never, from the first, regarded her marriage as a full cancelling of her claims upon life, she had at least, for a number of years, accepted it as a provisional compensation. She had made it do. Existence in the commodious Tillotson mansion in Fifth Avenue, with Mrs. Tillotson Senior commanding the approaches from the second-story front windows, had been reduced to a series of purely automatic acts. The moral atmosphere of the Tillotson interior was as carefully screened and curtained as the house itself. Mrs. Tillotson Senior dreaded ideas as much as a draught in her back. Prudent people like an even temperature, and to do anything unexpected was as foolish as going out in the rain. One of the chief advantages of being rich was that one need not be exposed to unforeseen contingencies. By the use of ordinary firmness and common sense, one could make sure of doing exactly the same thing every day at the same hour. These doctrines reverentially imbibed with his mother's milk, Tillotson, a model son who had never given his parents an hour's anxiety, complacently expounded to his wife, testifying to his sense of their importance by the regularity with which he wore galoshes on damp days, his punctuality at meals, and his elaborate precautions against burglars and contagious diseases. Lydia, coming from a smaller town and entering New York life through the portals of the Tillotson mansion, had mechanically accepted this point of view as inseparable from having a front pew in church and a parterre box at the opera. All the people who came to the house revolved in the same small circle of prejudices. It was the kind of society in which, after dinner, the ladies compared the exorbitant charges of their children's teachers and agreed that